addiction does not own me anymore. Drag me away from it all. Hide me beneath the undertow. Yeah. Drag me away from it all. Enjoy the show. We're with me on Zoom. Want to, you want to get back to the whole thing? No, just alter the number. I've been so terrible. You've seen the worst of it all. Love me, forgive me, see through my faults. Show me how to break down these walls and drive me away from it all. Hide me beneath the undertow and drive me away from it all, so we can be together once more. And we're already here together. Woo! Awesome to have you. Thank you for tuning in. It is my purpose to carry a message of strength and hope to those who are suffering as I once was. Reach for help. Michelle Jettison is the song that just played. And so I am glad we had a chance to get ourselves moving. Celestial King for a year. How fun is that? As long as that is paused, we're going to not pay attention to it. And I'm going to give you a few announcements. I wasn't intending to sit here, so I hadn't moved my vest. And I just moved both screens onto the same one so that I can actually go over and sit on the couch as I was intending. But what I have to admit is how handy it is when on Facebook and YouTube to be able to have the view be to both screens where I can see all of it. My goodness, not recording yet? If not, why not? We have to ask ourselves. If it didn't happen that way, why not? And we have to understand that everything is working for us. And when we have that understanding, and we can start to shift our perspective of things, we start to realize that we are the creators, regardless of whether you perceive yourself to be an artist specifically or not. Light on! It is time for us to understand that when I first sat over here a couple days ago, or a couple weeks ago probably, Michael Seegers, he and I were recording a video, and I could literally hear bells, and I couldn't figure it out because this was new to me. And in breathing into it or having air come through it, it makes the sound of bells, which I could hear and I didn't understand. And so it's a reminder of how things may not always be as they appear, and we may not necessarily know what's true. Which is why we have to just understand that we are creators. And we'll create our own stories. And that's why we need to look to the ones who have come before us. Saint Germain We've been reading Saint Germain on Alchemy on Thursday nights for about the last 6 weeks, getting through his pillar 2 and 3 within the 4 pillars of the Ascended Masters. So if you are available on Thursdays at 7 o'clock, we're going to be going into the next chapter of his work. And you can also see what we've already done on my YouTube channel under Books Read Aloud in that playlist. Now, The Artist's Way, we're up to the chapter onto connection. And yesterday, I actually went to my first rally, a freedom rally. But what I found in going and having called a few friends or messaged a few friends and then them come to it as well, is essentially it's just people gathering, which has no power unless we're focused. And on both sides of the street, there were different music playing. There were people out with loudspeakers shouting at these people, and it was a 4-way or a 3-way because traffic was coming from one direction and then 2 directions on the other road. And we just were there. And it didn't make sense to me to just be there without doing anything. And so what I suggested is for us to actually have something we could say together, mantras. So we need to create those. And I'm suggesting that because you who are watching this are co-creators in this world that we are creating together. And right now, we already know that normal is not natural and what is normal is not okay. And what is being normalized and put forward as the new normal, not okay either. So that's why we gather on Thursdays at 4 o'clock as well as 7 when we read Saint Germain on Alchemy. At 4 o'clock before that, we do the Peaceful Inner Warriors United Lawfully Organized Summit. It started where we were kind of teaming up with the Practical Lawful Dissent UK-Canada Commonwealth group that is now called International Practical Lawful Dissent. However, what we found is that by focusing only on Article 61 of the 1215 Magna Carta, which was the People's Protection Clause, that basically helped us understand that we are the way forward. It wasn't just Jesus who was instrumental in the work of the Ascended Masters. It was the fact that we have a chance to walk a path like what he did. And so on Friday, actually, if you wanted to come out to a summit where Michael Seegers is going to share a perspective of Jesus Christ. But I have an amazing friend, Dan Vanderwolf, that I'm really hoping can make it because he's got 2 books on Jesus or large references to him. One is Willingness to Love that I have, and the other one he just finished recently and got it published, which was Jesus. Was Jesus a conservative or a liberal? No, other way around. Was Jesus a liberal or conservative? So Dan Vanderwolf, I'm really hoping he can come because he's amazing. And we did a podcast for the Peaceful Inner Warriors United podcast already that I would love for you to be able to check out. My friend Brian Escobar is working diligently to help me make my website more accessible. So I just got my video changed as well on the landing page. So if you aren't already subscribed to ljeh.ca, please go there and do that so that I can send you emails while they're still on the old premise of being free. I suspect things are going to change and we're going to struggle with connection. So it's better to have the connections already. We need to be really creating some fibrous roots. And that was a lesson my mom gave me that is relevant to today about connection. When I lived in England and I was in a relationship with somebody that I'd known for a matter of months before I moved my entire life across the whole, well, across the ocean at least. And I went to a place where I knew no one other than my new boyfriend and his 2 children, his ex-wife, and he had a handful of friends. And other than that, I had to figure it out on my own. And he was just starting his own business and really didn't have time for a new girlfriend, but didn't want to pass up the opportunity of being with me and seeing what we could be. And so I was in a brand new country, figuring it out on my own with the support of a pseudo parent who essentially was amazing to me in many ways. And then in other ways, there was a lack of respect that needed addressing. And when it was finally addressed when we split, it was like I had a 12-year-old saying, Daddy has the power. And we can either be connected through power that way, where the relationship had morphed in some ways. And so it was the display of power dynamics that goes on when the connection is on the surface. And that's what fibrous roots are about. My mom, when I called her and I was doing something, it was something I was writing for a blog or something that I was telling her about. And she was like, you need to understand there are fibrous roots and there are tap roots. Fibrous roots are the ones that are like the myceli underneath of the surface of the ground, where the mushrooms have their root systems interconnected, talking to each other. And mushrooms are very similar to the human body, actually, like 50% similar from what I understand, which means that we can actually use not psychedelic mushrooms per se, though they can be great teachers as well. But if we actually just use like lion's mane and some of the other mushrooms, I'm actually getting a few, I ordered some, and so they're on their way. If Amazon's delivery issue with so many of their workers evidently getting sick that it was going to slow things down. But like something I ordered a few days ago just arrived. So there's a level of fear mongering right here that is we're really susceptible to, and we have to really understand how it's playing out for us. Because last year, what I'll say is that I didn't really want to put a whole bunch of energy into things because I didn't believe that they would last. And so I played less than I could have. I made my space less desirable or beautiful because I didn't get the plants and the things that bring life to my space that make me happy and smile, because I was concerned about how drastically things would change because of the reports that I've read, which I printed off the Rockefeller report 2010 recently. And what I've realized is that so many people don't understand what it says once they're actually into it, that we need to understand that right now we're in the lockstep program of it. And then there's something other than that that comes next, which we need to understand what they have planned, not so we can get fearful of it, but just so that the ones who say they're conspiracists, well, I'm sorry, but when the conspiracy has more truth behind it than the falsehood that we're being sold, we have to investigate our alliances to truth, because that's ultimately what is being tested right now. And Jesus, when he was being crucified, he said, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And we have to really take that example to heart. We have to really understand that literally the ones who are allowing themselves to be guinea pigs in an experiment of RNA gene modification, it's insane. And yet it has been sequentially conditioned into the people. Go get your vaccine. Go get your vaccine. Go get your vaccine each year. Just the flu shot. Just the flu shot. Just this. Just these. Just these. And then it comes for the big one. And you're so used to just these. Oh, okay. And that's what is literally happening right now to people we love. And then you have the systemic indoctrination of smart individuals who are being fed BS by profiteering corporations, corporate entities that have no soul, which mean they have no ability to care for us. I had heard that the RNA altering injections were going to actually be targeting the 8th chromosome of empathy, which was a story that I had heard that would have made sense considering all of the programming towards violence and hatred and war that we've all grown up on in the last century. And certainly if you're a centenarian who's watching this, like, hats off to you, because that's amazing. I would love to know I would love to know if there were actually some elderly people that are actually watching these alternative ideas, because relating back to the myceli, which is the root system of mushrooms, that actually is very similar to the neuro pathways of our own mind, we have to understand that there is communication that is being sent. And if we are looking to do what we've always done to get more of what we've always got, it's like what my friend Chantel Matheson said in one of our summits recently about how it's literally like walking down a path and beating down the grass as we're going. And it's like if we're following in somebody else's tracks, the grass is already going to be beat down a bit in front of us. And it's the same in our mind, where if we have a certain thought and the brain is used to going to that thought this way, it's going to do it that way because it's just going to follow the path in the grass until it gets to the idea, metaphorically. And so, what we have to actually understand, and why I celebrate anyone who is willing to be open to consider some of these alternative perspectives that require you say, hey, the grass is longer this way, but I think that this is actually the way that we need to go. So, I'm going to make my own path, and I'm going to go this way, and then this way, and then this way, and then we're there. And somehow we got there as well. And my dad says when I was little, whenever he would tell me what to do and then tell me how to do it, he said I'd always have to do it differently. And he couldn't understand it, and it often took me longer, but I had to do it that way, and I would do it anyway. But it was frustrating for him because he knew that there was a better, faster way, because the grass was beat down so fast and so far and packed down that he knew this was a good way. But then little Laura needed to just go zig, 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 zig. Now we got there, like 10 minutes later or faster. But the point is that when we do something new, we actually blaze a new path in the grass for ourselves, and by our behavior that creates our results, then we influence others through our example of embodiment. Like Jesus Christ, who proudly wore the corona, which is the gaseous aura around a son of God, of which he is known to be one. And so the subconscious, for anyone religious, will say, yes, of course, he is the son of God. Of course, we are told that in the good book. Well, what if you and I too were also sons of the one, of which radiates the gaseous aura of intensity, of passion, enthusiasm, authenticity, clarity, encouragement, finding your tribe, knowing you're here with people that support you because you're willing to blaze a new path that they might not understand, but they respect you for being willing to try. And you understand what's important to you as to why you have to do things a different way, not because you understand why you have to do things a certain way, but understanding who you are that is making those choices matters. And then loving what arises because it's happening now because you're ready to face it. That is significant too. And then when we can let go of our attachment to the not now moments, oh my, our world it becomes revolutionized. And when we are able to revolutionize our world, that is when everything changes. Because as Wayne Dyer said, change the way you look at things and everything you look at changes. So today, on this 21st day of March, I would invite you to come next Friday, or this Friday, on the 27th, I believe it is, where you're going to actually have a chance to have a conversation about who was Jesus and why did his story above others matter. It's the 26th of March at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So please definitely come out for that conversation. If you are musically inclined, there is another opportunity you could check out as well on Tuesday at 3:30, which is the Mad Hatter's Mystic Music Album 22 Summit. And it's a project that artists from around the world are working together to collaborate in creating conscious music that can uplift, literally vibrationally, by understanding the frequencies. And even in fact, from the 1930s, when they changed the normal tone from, or the set rate from being at 432 hertz, which is actually healing because if you were to look at the high rise of emotional awareness, for instance, my interpretation of that is basically that 432 hertz and other frequencies that are healing essentially get us to the point of contentment. And then it's like an elevator or escalator that takes us up into optimism, positive expectation or belief, enthusiasm, eagerness, happiness, passion, love, peace, joy, knowledge, freedom, empowerment. But then in the 1930s, they had a closed door meeting where they said, no, 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 that is too good for the masses. We need to reserve that for the elite so that we save the resources, like what they want to do with Agenda 21 as well. If you've read into that, it's pretty horrifying. But they call it the Sustainability Act to make sure that it seems like it's a good thing for all of us. But the truth is that it sustained the resources of the world for the few at the expense of the many. And I say, no, if we can understand that that meeting in the 30s took the 432 hertz and changed it to 440 hertz, which is not healing. It is disruptive. It is jarring to our emotional, energetic system, which we don't understand because we haven't been taught about it. But that's been intentional too, because all of this whole indoctrination experiment has really been about moving us away from our divine nature. So at 440 hertz, if you listen to the regular mainstream music, for instance, if you find yourself getting irritated or bored, pessimistic, frustrated, irritated, impatient, overwhelmed, disappointed, doubtful, worried, blaming, discouraged, angry, revengeful, feeling hatred, rage, jealousy, insecurity, guilt, unworthiness, fear, grief, depression, despair, powerlessness, that's when then you understand that you're actually being hacked. And so there is a virus here. And the virus is us, if you listen to The Matrix. And when the Smith agent says that basically humans are the virus, and he says it with a lot of disdain and malice, but it's true. We are the virus, because if I infect you with this information, then you get to do with that information what you will. And maybe you'll pass it on to somebody else who then will infect somebody else. And the spreading of information is where the contagion factor comes. And when we are willing to do that responsibly, when we are finally willing to actually say that we could actually be the ones that history books write about in retrospect, just like they did with him, that's when we have an opportunity to do something completely new. And connecting is a huge piece of this. Now, I didn't finish the story about the tap roots and the fibrous roots. So fibrous roots are the myceli underneath of the surface that spread the information. Tap roots are like a carrot, or like one big deep root that might have some little, what do you call them? Little growth off of them, little sprouts. But ultimately, the main branch of it, the growth of it, is straight down. And then that gets fed. And those relationships, she explained, were like family who are always there, supposed to be. And the ones that love you, even though you don't maybe like each other. So there's that as well. And I feel like it's relevant today as we talk about connection, because if we understand the interconnectedness of all of it, we understand then that we are like the fibrous roots of this world. And that what I hope is that we will be able to be kind enough to ourselves to be graceful when we enter into a spiral of negativity that starts with boredom, which is why they say that idle hands make a devil's playground. They say that because that's when then you start saying, well, maybe I could just do this and it won't matter. Nobody will notice. I won't tell anybody. It'll just be our secret. But every prayer is heard. Everything is observed. We are literally observing ourselves, observing ourselves, observing ourselves being observed. It's this multi-dimensional perspective we have to understand. And when we do, things become quite grand. because that's when we can then stand as who we truly are. Our emotional states are not true. They are fearful when they are not of this moment, showing up in this moment to be transmuted by the one that is you in this moment, and you don't know whose they are. And if it matters to you and you become attached to that information as to why it's showing up and whose is it and where did it come from and what were the circumstances around it, all of that story, your mind then works harder, which means it brings more energy toward that fearful thought, which is false emotion appearing real in the present moment. So if we understand the emotional high rise of awareness, and we understand that we can actually shift ourselves out of boredom into a state of contentment by learning to find inner peace within our own selves, which I found an incredible journal entry that I made 2 years ago when I was in Sedona, or I wasn't there quite yet. We started out in Vegas and then road tripped out to Utah and then down to Arizona, across to California. And then I drove back from California to Vegas to fly home myself 3 weeks later. And it was an expansive trip, and it was an expensive trip from a self-esteem perspective and from the perspective of my resources. However, it wasn't as expensive as what it would have been had both of us needed to have been on that trip together to experience the karmic lessons that we had to go through together at that time. And so if I were to hold on to the fact that I never got paid for that trip, which is what makes me slightly resentful towards the person that I went on the trip with, because then the friendship was severed and then you can't show the pictures with that person in it and you can't talk about that trip, about that person, or the things that were experienced on it with said person, because there has been a violation inserted into the dynamic that hasn't been remedied or hasn't been addressed or acknowledged, which is disrespectful. And when disrespect gets introduced into a dynamic, the connection gets impacted. And so if we're really wanting to not only have fibrous relationships in this life, but we also want to have those deep relationships, what I believe is that we need to become the taproot our own self, to become the one that is firm and rooted and solid and knows what we stand for as individuals, because then we can be firm and rooted enough for others to come and build with and around. And we become a more productive co-creator when we understand who we are and we're also willing to be flexible. Because like the neuroplasticity of the mind, if we're on one track, it's very easy to be dissuaded from trying something new because we're so used to this one. And now it's time for us to say, we turn this week to the practice of right attitudes for creativity. The emphasis is on your receptive as well as active skills. The essays, exercises, and tasks aim at excavating areas of genuine creative interest as you connect with your personal dreams. So, recovering a sense of connection begins with listening. The ability to listen is a skill we are honing with both our morning pages and our artist dates, which is when we're taking ourselves out for an independent date, just you and you, going out to do something you love together, just yourselves together, but still that connection with your own self as the solid foundation on which everything else springs off of. The artist dates help us to pick up the voice of inspiration. While both of these activities are apparently unconnected to the actual act of making art, they are critical to the creative process. Art is not about thinking something up. It is about the opposite, getting something down. The directions are important here. If we are trying to think up something, we are straining to reach for something that's just beyond our grasp. Up there in the stratosphere, where art lives on high. When we get something down, there is no strain. We're not doing, we're getting. Someone or something else is doing the doing. Instead of reaching for inventions, we're engaged in listening. When an actor is in the moment, he or she is engaged in listening for the next right thing creatively. When a painter is painting, he or she may begin with a plan, but that plan is soon surrendered to the painting's own plan. I'm going to just read that again because it's significant. When a painter is painting, he or she may begin with a plan, but that plan is soon surrendered to the painting's own plan. This is often expressed as the brush takes the next stroke. In dance, in composition, in sculpture, the experience is the same. We are more the conduit than the creator of what we express. Art is an act of tuning in and dropping down the well. It is as though all the stories, painting, music, performances in the world live just under the surface of our normal consciousness. Like an underground river, they flow through us as a stream of ideas that we can tap down into. Tap down into. Of course, that would be why I shared with you about the fibrous and tap roots today. Okay, sometimes I wonder why certain things come up, and then it's like, I get it. And I just wanted to share that with you because it happened live, as life does. Okay. Like an underground river, they flow through us as a stream of ideas that we can tap down into. As artists, we drop down the well into the stream. We hear what's down there and we act on it, more like taking dictation than anything fancy having to do with art. A friend of mine is a superb film director who is known for his meticulous planning, and yet he often shoots most brilliantly from the seat of his pants, quickly grabbing a shot that comes to him as he works. These moments of clear inspiration require that we move into them on faith. I understand this one fully. That's what even this is. This is just all faith driven. It's just like, okay, sure, I'll do it because it's required. And so it's just like the summits as well. On Tuesdays with the Mystic Music Summit, that started because I was doing other summits and I said to Jared Wade, who has Mad Hatter's Music, and we're co-hosting the experience. We were talking and I said, we need to bring in music because that's how we harmonize humanity. And so we started doing these summits, and then the interest grew, and now we're putting together a CD with 22 artists too. It's amazing. And I'm even working on a collaborative piece with Denise Exler, who has contributed light language, and then Tony, Eric, who has submitted the instrumental, and then I'm going to do some stuff as well that I'm learning how to do because Eric's giving me some guidance as to how to work around what Denise has done based on something that I did produce that I did separately too. And it's just like together, it all works so magnificently if we just trust and have faith that what is inspired from within us is in spirit. So that is how our intuition speaks to us, through inspired noise sometimes, or to just have the idea. And then also understanding how intuition works. Like there's clear cognizance of clear knowing, clear sentience of clear sensing, clear audience is clear listening, clear visual is to be able to see clearly without it actually being there first. But we're all clear visual in the sense that the first time that we see something is actually the second, because the first time was in the mind's eye when we envisioned it ahead of time. And so the sculpture is just being recovered is the example that comes to mind. So a friend of mine is a superb film director who is known for his meticulous planning, and yet he often shoots most brilliantly from the seat of his pants, quickly grabbing a shot that comes to him as he works. These moments of clear inspiration require that we move with them on faith. We can practice these small leaps of faith daily in our pages and on our artist dates. We can learn not only to listen, but to also hear with increasing accuracy that inspired intuitive voice that says, do this, try this, say this. Most writers have had the experience of catching a poem or a paragraph or two of formed writing. We consider these finds to be small miracles. What we fail to realize is that they are, in fact, the norm. We are the instruments. We are the instrument more than the author of our work. Michelangelo is said to have remarked that he released David from the marble block he found him in. The painting has a life of its own. I try to let it come through, said Jackson Pollock. When I teach screenwriting, I remind my students that their movie already exists in its entirety. Their job is to listen for it, watch it with their mind's eye, and write it down. The same may be said of all art. If painting and sculptures wait for us, then sonatas wait for us, books, plays, and poems wait for us too. Our job is to simply get them down. To do that, we drop down the well. Some people find it easier to picture the stream of inspiration as being like radio waves of all sorts being broadcast at all times. Which, underneath of here, this was the radio transmitter analogy of you as the radio station, sending out thoughts to be received by the creator, source, God, designer of all things, to then be transmuted and given back to you through things, people, places, events, situations. And so that just gives you back your expectations. So thoughts come, expectations return to you. So what are you expecting will reflect in what you're getting. Some people find it easier to picture the stream of inspiration as being like radio waves of all sorts being broadcast at all times. With practice, we can learn how to hear the desired frequency on request. We tune into the frequency we want. Like a parent, we learn to hear the voice of our current brainchild among the other children's voices. Once you accept that it is natural to create, you can begin to accept a second idea, that the creator will hand you whatever you need for the project. The minute you are willing to accept the help of this creator, you will see useful bits of help everywhere in your life. Be alert. There is a second voice, a higher harmonic, adding to and augmenting your inner creative voice. This voice frequently shows itself in synchronicity. You will hear the dialogue you need, find the right song for the sequence, see the exact paint color you almost had in mind, and so forth. You will have the experience of finding things, books, seminars, tossed out stuff that happen to fit with what you are doing. Learn to accept the possibility that the universe is helping you with what you are doing. Become willing to see the hand of God and accept it as a friend's offer to help with what you are doing, because many of us unconsciously harbor the fearful belief that God would find our creations decadent or frivolous or worse. We tend to discount this creator-to-creator help. Try to remember that God is the great artist. Artists like other artists. Expect the universe to support your dream. It will. Listening is a form of accepting. Stella Tyrrell Mann. In the exoteric Judaism of the Kabbalah, the deep self is named the Neshama, from the root of SHMHM, to hear or listen. The Neshama is she who listens, the soul who whispers or guides us. Starhawk. Sounds a lot like our intuition. Cool. Perfectionism is the next piece. Tiller Olson correctly calls it the knife of the perfectionist attitude in art. You may call it something else. Getting it right, you may call it, or fixing it before I go any further. You may call it having standards. What you should be calling it is perfectionism. Perfectionism has nothing to do with getting it right. It has nothing to do with fixing things. It has nothing to do with standards. Perfectionism is a refusal to let yourself move ahead, and I can relate to that one too. It is a loop, an obsession, debilitative. It is a loop, an obsessive, debilitating closed system that causes you to get stuck in the details of what you are writing or painting or making and to lose sight of the whole. And yes, it is very deluding. Instead of creating freely and allowing errors to reveal themselves later as insights, we might get mired in getting the details right. We correct our originality into uniformity that lacks passion and spontaneity. Do not fear mistakes, Miles Davis told us. There are none. The perfectionist fixes one line of a poem over and over until no lines are right. The perfectionist redraws the chin line on a portrait until the paper tears. The perfectionist writes so many versions of one scene that she never gets to the rest of the play. I can relate to that. The perfectionist writes, paints, creates with one eye on her audience. Instead of enjoying the process, the perfectionist is constantly grading the results. The perfectionist has married the logic side of the brain. The critic reigns supreme in the perfectionist creative household. A brilliant descriptive prose passage is critiqued with a white glove approach. What about that comma? Is this how you spell? For the perfectionist, there are no first drafts, rough sketches, warm-up exercises. Every draft is meant to be final, perfect, set in stone. Oh boy, I didn't realize. Midway through a project, the perfectionist decides to read it all over, outline it, see where it's going. And where is it going? Nowhere, very fast. The perfectionist is never satisfied. The perfectionist never says, "This is pretty good, I think I'll just keep going." To the perfectionist, there is always room for improvement. The perfectionist calls this humility. In reality, it is egoism. It is egotism. It is pride that makes us want to write a perfect script, paint a perfect painting, perform a perfect audition monologue, write the best book ever. We should not. Perfectionism is not a quest for the best. It is a pursuit of the worst in ourselves, the part that tells us that nothing we do will ever be good enough, that we should try again. No, we should not. A painting is never finished. It simply stops in interesting places, said Paul Gardner. A book is never finished, but at a certain point, you stop writing it and go on to the next thing. A film is never cut perfectly, but at a certain point, you let go and call it done. That is a normal part of creativity, letting go. We always do the best that we can by the light we have to see by. Risk. Wow, this is such an incredible description of where I was before I broke down and was humbled and rendered at the bottom of the high rise of emotional awareness, and in those lower states for long enough that I really realized that it wasn't working for me. And that's when I really shifted. And I can totally relate to where this was, because I had to put the book aside for a while. And I had to make it not be about that project, because then I had started to define my entire life by the book, the book, the book. And it was not useful. I finished the book 3 times, but the world has never seen those versions, because finally now I have got over my perfectionism to do a whole bunch of other things, then finish the final book. But I've got everything I need to be able to do it. I just need to make the time. And that's the thing. We have to prioritize it, and we have to weigh risk, which is the next chapter. Question: what would I do if I didn't have to do it perfectly? Answer: a great deal more than I am. We've all heard that the unexamined life is not worth living, but consider too that the unlived life is not worth examining. The success of a creative recovery hinges on our ability to move out of the head and into action. This brings us squarely to risk. Most of us are practiced at talking ourselves out of risk. We are skilled speculators on the probable pain of self-exposure. I'll look like an idiot, we say, conjuring images of our first acting class, our first hobbled short story, our terrible drawings. Part of the game here is lining up the masters and measuring our baby steps against their perfected craft. We don't compare our student films to George Lucas's student films. Instead, we compare them to Star Wars. We deny that in order to do something well, we must first be willing to do it badly. Instead, we opt for setting our limits at the point where we feel assured of success. Living within these bounds, we may feel stifled, smothered, despairing, bored, and yes, we do feel safe. And safety is a very expensive illusion. In order to risk, we must jettison our accepted limits. We must break through "I can't because I am too old, too broke, too shy, too proud, self-defeated, timorous." Usually when we say we can't do something, what we mean is that we won't do something unless we can guarantee that we'll do it perfectly. Working artists know the folly of this stance. There is a common joke among directors. Oh, yeah, I always know exactly how I should direct the picture after I'm done directing it. As blocked artists, we unrealistically expect and demand success from others. As blocked artists, we unrealistically expect and demand success from ourselves and recognition of that success from others. With that, as an unspoken demand, a great many things remain outside our sphere of possibility, especially with the number of narcissists that are in our midst who will intentionally refrain from offering compliments until they can fully see everything that you said would be the way it was. And then what they can see, they'll judge that pretty hard too. So just keeping that in mind when you are sharing, that if you're looking for outside approval, sometimes people will intentionally not give it to you to just keep themselves feeling more empowered or more powerful because they haven't allowed you to get what you want. So you still need from them, which is a power positional situation where you're wanting from them. And so they feel superior. And then to withhold that makes you want them for longer, which then makes them feel powerful. It's just the same as Maslow's hierarchy of needs with survival at the foundation of the pyramid, safety, belonging, respect, and self-actualization, and then understanding that Tony Robbins took that hierarchy of needs and then actually made it into 6 that I like better, which is certainty and variety at the foundation as the core motivational needs. And then you have connection, which we're talking about today, significance, and then growth and contribution. But the crazy thing is, those first 4, certainty, variety, connection, and significance, are experienced and extracted from violence and fear-inducing circumstances like what's going on right now culturally, where everyone's being programmed to fear the governmental system that clearly has Munchausen syndrome, which is basically where the parent poisons the child in order to get attention for the parent. Madness. But if we don't know what to look for, then we just sense something's wrong and we don't quite know what to do about it, which is why I say the things that I do amidst all of the rest of what I do in hopes that it might connect somebody that needed to hear that to be able to see everything else that you've already been putting together in a different perspective so that then we can finally start really rowing together. When we understand what's going on, then we can truly connect and then move forward without it needing to be violent. Like certainty, variety, significance, and connection, those are all experienced with violence or with something loving, with something better, a path like what Jesus walked, for instance, or what we have the capacity to do. All of these things meet those 4 foundational needs, and then growth and contribution of sharing what we learned with others after we've been through everything we went through to get to who we are today, which is impressive. And celebrate yourself. Just you who's watching this right now, honestly, just like give yourself a pat on the back because you made it through 100% of your darkest days. Congratulations. Those were not easy. And I don't know your story specifically, but what I know is that none of us know the battles that others fight. And that is the reason that kindness is required. We must be kind because we don't know what battle someone else is waging and how weak they came to us in, what state they came to us in. And we can either be that narcissistic sucker of power that likes to feel positionally superior, which is just an illusion, or we can just be kind and hold space and settle ourselves and them down so they can get back in the moment and get their power back too, because this is the only moment we ever have any power. In order to risk, we must jettison our accepted limits. We must break through I can't because I am too old, broke, shy, proud, self-defeated, timorous. Usually when we say we can't do something, what we mean is that we won't do something unless we can guarantee that we'll do it perfectly. Working artists know the folly of this stance. There is a common joke among directors. Oh yeah, I always know exactly how I should direct the picture after I'm done directing it. As blocked artists, we unrealistically expect and demand success from ourselves and recognition of that success from others. what with that is as an unspoken demand. A great many things remain outside our sphere of possibility. As actors, we tend to allow ourselves to be typecast rather than working to expand our range. As singers, we stay married to our safe material. As songwriters, we try to repeat a formula hit. In this way, artists who do not appear blocked to the outside eye experience themselves as blocked internally, unable to take the risk of moving into new and more satisfying artistic territory. Once we are willing to accept that anything worth doing might even be worth doing badly, our options widen. If I didn't have to do it perfectly, I would try stand-up comedy, modern dancing, whitewater rafting, archery, learning German, figure drawing, figure skating, being a platinum blonde, puppeteering, trapeze, water ballet, polo, wearing red lipstick, taking a couture class, writing short stories, reading my poetry in public, a spontaneous tropical vacation, learning to shoot video, learning to ride a bike, taking a watercolor class. In the movie Raging Bull, boxer Jake LaMotta's manager brother explains to him why he should shed some weight and fight an unknown opponent. After an intricate spiel that leaves LaMotta baffled, he concludes, "So do it. If you win, you win. If you lose, you win." It is always that way with taking risks. To put it differently, very often a risk is worth taking simply for the sake of taking it. There is something enlivening about expanding our self-definition, and a risk does exactly that. Selecting a challenge and meeting it creates a sense of self-empowerment that becomes the ground for further successful challenges. Viewed this way, running a marathon increases your chances of writing a full-length play. Writing a full-length play gives you a leg up on a marathon. Complete the following sentence. If I didn't have to do it perfectly, I would try what? Would you try if you didn't have to do it perfectly? We cannot escape fear. We can only transform it into a companion that accompanies us on all our exciting adventures. Take a risk a day, one small or bold stroke that will make you feel great once you have done it. Susan Jeffers, who I believe wrote Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. No, that was Tony Robbins. I forget what she wrote, but I have the book over there. Celebration is the enemy of originality in art, Martin Ritt. Living is a form of not being sure, not knowing what next or how. The moment you know how, you begin to die a little. The artist never entirely knows how. We guess. We may be wrong, but we take leap after leap in the dark. Agnes de Mille. Shoot for the moon. Even if you miss, you will land among the stars. Les Brown. There is no must in art, because art is free. Wassily Kandinsky. In the movie Raging Bull, Jealousy. Jealousy, I've often heard, is a normal human emotion. When I hear that, I think, maybe your jealousy, not mine. My jealousy roars in the head, tightens the chest, massages my stomach lining with a cold fist as it searches out the best grip. I have long regarded jealousy as my greatest weakness. Only recently have I seen it for the tough love friend that it is. Jealousy is a map. Each of our jealousy maps differ. Each of us will probably be surprised by some of the things we discover on our own. I, for example, have never been eaten alive with resentment over the success of women novelists, but I took on an unhealthy interest in the fortunes and misfortunes of women playwrights. I was their harshest critic until I wrote my first play. With that action, my jealousy vanished, replaced by a feeling of camaraderie. My jealousy had actually been a mask for my fear of doing something I really wanted to do, but was not yet brave enough to take action toward. Jealousy is always a mask for fear. Fear that we aren't able to get what we want, frustration that somebody else seems to be getting what is rightfully ours, even if we are too frightened to reach for it. At its root, jealousy is a stingy emotion. It doesn't allow for the abundance and multiplicity of the universe. Jealousy tells us there is room for only one poet, one painter, one whatever you dream of being. The truth, revealed by action in the direction of our dreams, is that there is room for all of us. But jealousy produces tunnel vision. It narrows our ability to see things in perspective. It strips us of our ability to see other options. The biggest lie that jealousy tells us is that we have no choice but to be jealous. Perversely, jealousy strips us of our will to act when action holds the key to our freedom. The jealousy map, an exercise. Your jealousy map will have 3 columns. In the first column, name those whom you are jealous of. Next to each name, write why. Be as specific and accurate as you can. In the third column, list one action you can take to move toward creative risk and out of jealousy. When jealousy bites, take a snack bite. It requires when jealousy bites, like a snake bite, it requires an immediate antidote. On paper, make your jealousy map. So, who, why, and action antidote. Even the biggest changes begin with small ones. Green is the color of jealousy, but it is also the color of hope. When you learn to harness its fierce energy on your own behalf, jealousy is part of the fuel toward a greener and more verdant future. Archaeology, an exercise. The phrases that follow are more of your sleuth work. Very often, we have buried parts of ourselves that can be uncovered by some digging. Not only will your answers tell you what you missed in the past, they will tell you what you can be doing now to comfort and encourage your artist child. It is not too late, no matter what your ego tells you. Complete these phrases. As a kid, I missed the chance to. As a kid, I lacked. As a kid, I could have used. As a kid, I dreamed of being. As a kid, I wanted in my house, we never had enough. As a kid, I needed more. I am sorry that I will never again see. For years, I have missed and wondered about. I beat myself up about the loss of. It is important to acknowledge our positive inventory as well as our shortfalls. Take positive stock of what good you have to build on in the present. Finish these phrases. I have a loyal friend in. One thing I like about my town is, I think I have nice. Writing my morning pages has shown me I can. I am taking a greater interest in. I believe I am getting better at. My artist has started to pay more attention to. My self-care is. I feel more. Possibly my creativity is. Trust in yourself. Your perceptions are often far more accurate than you are willing to believe. Claudia Black. With courage, you will dare to take risks, have the strength to be compassionate and the wisdom to be humble. Courage is the foundation of integrity. Keshavan Nair. I don't have a lot of respect for talent. Talent is genetic. It's what you do with it that counts. Martin Ritt. Tasks and check-in, and we're a couple pages away, so we're going to be right around the hour mark again today. Woohoo! How are you today? I would love to know. Do comment, and I'm going to check over on Facebook once we finish through these next 3 pages, and then it will be rounding up the service. If anyone is interested as well, I do have the prayer bag right behind the camera there. So if you want any names to be put into that bag, I'll just grab that so that you have the visual. And so we have a little sparkly side, and it's a graduation because we're forgiving ourselves for our past trespasses and choosing to invite the ones who have maybe trespassed against us into the bag. And so by doing it, you're liberating yourself. And so I'm sending a few names into that bag myself. And so please do comment as to if there are any names that you might want to have put into the bag. I think I'm just going to put this in front of the, I can't do it, guys. I can't fit it all. I cannot fit it all in, so we're just going to carry on. But we're going to be sending the people love, and then also you who is willing to do the releasing and the heavy lifting soul-wise. We're giving you the opportunity to also have some of the healing that is coming from that experience of forgiving somebody who trespassed against you because of the karma that they had, maybe, or maybe the karma you had. And even actually, if you're not aware of this, it's vital information that I came across a couple years ago that was very useful to me. And it was in her audio program, or Soul Contracts. What she actually says is that the souls that betray us are the souls that love our soul the very most, because their soul was willing to contract with us to do what they did in order for us to be able to be stretched in a way that only pain can really take us to, generally speaking. And that betrayal of having who you thought to be there for you not be there for you, it really changes everything. And so it's those souls that betray us that are actually karmically oftentimes the best soulmates in terms of the mates of our own soul. So I offer that to anyone who is feeling betrayed or has felt betrayed, and to give you an opportunity to put the ones that did betray you potentially, or whom you betrayed, into the bag, so that we can send them good juju and love. And then we'll get to the tasks. Make this phrase a mantra. Treating myself like a precious object will make me strong. Watercolor or crayon or calligraphy this phrase. Post it where you will see it daily. We tend to think being hard on ourselves will make us strong, but it is cherishing ourselves that gives us strength, which is why you came to a sacred self-compassion service this Sunday. And I say congratulations. And if you're coming at a different day than Sunday, well done for going back and catching up. And I hope that something speaks to you, and would love to know what that is. So please, if you haven't noticed, I do really enjoy the engagement and the connection with those who view what I do, and all of it I do with love in my heart, because I feel to whomever much is given, much is required. And I've had a very unique opportunity in this life to gain access to incredible information and players of the game of life. And actually, I literally just bought Florence Scovel Shinn's book, The Complete Works of, but literally the first one is The Game of Life and How to Play It. So you better believe we're going to be reading that soon too, because if we know how to play the game of life, oh my God, how much easier does it get? You can listen to audio programs of hers. She's amazing. So I don't know why it only just goes by Shin on this one, but I thought she had a Shovel is normally what it is. But these are all four of the books that she wrote between 1920 and 1945, or 1925 and 1945. So 20 years worth of reading in four books that I am just psyched to get myself into. And yet I need to get my own out, So finding balance, maybe you can relate. Give yourself time out to listen to one side of an album just for joy. You may want to doodle as you listen, allowing yourself to draw the shapes, emotions, thoughts you hear in the music. Notice how just 20 minutes can refresh you. Learn to take these mini artist dates to break stress and allow insights. Because if you're in a reactive state, we actually have three minds. So you have the reptilian instinctual mind at the center, and then you have the mammalian mind outside of that, which is really the subconscious, and how the mammalian mind governs just our instincts in the reptilian snake bite kind of way, but in our relationship to our environment. And then we have the conscious mind outside of that, which is the part of us that allows us to link concepts together and then make ideas and belief systems about certain things that create paradigms, which are, if you want to think of it in terms of a grid system, like a matrix overlay, that's really what the 4D mental patterning is. So from what I'm coming to understand is it's like everything is overlaid because all time is happening right now. So the 4D grid system is actually all of our paradigms and our thought forms. And that's where entities are able to travel easily, which is why if we're not conscious of where we're putting our energy, then we can actually be overtaken by an entity, which is a thought form, that then suddenly makes us feel a certain emotion we don't understand where it came from, which is why I always say there's 4 questions you ask when you get emotional. Is this mine? You'll get a yes or a no. If it's yours, deal with it. If it's not, let it go. Can I let this go? Will I let this go? If not, why not? So understanding why it's showing up for you, because it's doing so to serve you. And if you're attached to that, then it's your responsibility to cut the cords to the not now moments, to bring yourself back fully present to the now moment so that you can fully enjoy it. Take yourself into a sacred space, a church, synagogue, library, grove of trees, and allow yourself to savor the silence and healing solitude. Each of us has a personal idea of what sacred space is. For me, a large clock store or a great aquarium store can engender a sense of timeless wonder. Experiment. Create one wonderful smell in your home with soup, incense, fir branches, candles, whatever. Make your house smell lovely. So then when you smell it, you know that you did that. Wear your favorite item of clothing for no special occasion, understanding you are special because you made it here. And there's literally Mel Robbins, she's great. If you're not familiar with her, she's got the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, get up and go theory that works really well. And she talks about, I lost it. But Mel Robbins, she's excellent. So would definitely recommend checking out her stuff. And I forgot what I was going to say around that. Oh, she was saying about you have 1 in 400 trillion odds of actually being born. So regardless of how we've misconstrued the meaning of what it means to be special, you're special. Because you and we had a 1 in 400 trillion chance of actually being born. There were so many souls that wanted to be here at this turning point time in history, to be able to have their vote count, not the one that they write on a ballot that's fictitious anyway, but to actually have their stand present, for them to be able to make a claim like, we wanted to be here, we chose to be here. And no matter how crazy it could get, when consequences for choices made start showing up in a major way because of how many people have chosen irresponsibly because of blind followership, we have to be strong. And so I'm glad you're taking the time to be here today. We'll get through this. Buy yourself 1 wonderful pair of socks, 1 wonderful pair of gloves, 1 wonderfully comforting, self-loving something. Make a collage. Collect a stack of at least 10 magazines, which you will allow yourself to freely dismember. Setting a 20-minute time limit for yourself, tear, literally, through the magazines, collecting any images that reflect your life or interests. Think of this collage as a form of pictorial autobiography. Include your past, present, future, and your dreams. It is okay to include images you simply like. Keep pulling until you have a good stack of images, at least 20. Now take a sheet of newspaper, a stapler, or some tape or glue and arrange your images in a way that pleases you. This is one of my students' favorite exercises. Quickly list 5 favorite films. Do you see any common denominators among them? Are they romances, adventures, period pieces, political dramas, family epics, thrillers? Do you see traces of your cinematic themes in your collage? Name your favorite topics to read about. Comparative religion, movies, ESP, physics, rags to riches, betrayal, love triangles, scientific breakthroughs, sports. Are these topics on your collage? What about empowering ones? What about self-esteem? What about self-image? These are the things that we're going to be working through with the Peaceful Inner Warriors United special practice. I would love for you to be able to gain access to too. I'm working on a course on Udemy just to be able to have it all in one place. And then I want to have weekly or bi-weekly courses on the material so that then we can really go deeper together and create a special practice that truly honors who and whose we truly are. So if you want to be part of that, let me know. Keep yourself in tuned in. And the last thing that they say is, or that Julia Cameron from The Artist's Way says, give your collage a place of honor. Even a secret place of honor is all right. In your closet, in a drawer, anywhere that is yours. You may want to do a new one every few months, or collage more thoroughly a dream you are trying to accomplish. But your vision board is ultimately what is going to train your reticular activating system, your RAS, which is what Maxwell Maltz refers to as the part of us that makes it so that we recognize our dreams or the things that we like or that we don't like even more, because our RAS, reticular activating system, is attuned to noticing that thing. So if it's attuned, for instance, I have a Ford Fiesta, and so I notice other Ford Fiestas when I'm on the road. And I also really like Rogues because of what they represent. And so I always notice when there's a Rogue in front of me, for instance. And so I notice the Rogues on the road. And so that's only because that's of interest and what is mine. And so the same will be true for you too. It's just like if you were to close your eyes and you were to visualize a refrigerator, what color would it be? What is it shaped like? Is it a top loading or bottom loading freezer unit? What I would imagine when you were envisioning a refrigerator, you likely envisioned yours. Am I right? That's because your RAS is attuned to what is yours, or what we want, or what we don't want, which is why it's so important that we intentionally direct our focus. Otherwise, what we don't want then becomes what drives us. And that only drives us to more of what we don't want. Because just like with going to that freedom rally yesterday that ended up more so being about anti the circumstances that we find ourselves in, I realized, oh God, it was one of those moments where I showed up and suddenly I'm glad that I went, truly, and I got to connect with some amazing people, and I invited a few people that I was glad to get to see. And so I'm glad that I went, but I was going to be focused on this, on making this course, which is really what my priority is and needs to be right now. And yet I ended up kind of feeling like, well, like I'm running the Thursday lawfully organized events at 4:00 that I would invite you to come to. And so we are wrapping up today's service. But I'm doing those, and I'm doing the Tuesday summits at 3:30 with the Mystic Music Mad Hatters Album 22 project, or the Mental Health and Harmonizing Humanity with Music summits that we always do on Tuesdays at 3:30 now. And I'm doing these services. So like I'm really doing my best to connect. But then there was that other part of me, whether it's guilt, shame, or comparison or curiosity. But there was the part of me that it was just like, it is true. Like I can be at home on my own anytime, but you never know who you're going to meet when you actually go somewhere and you get to see people. But what I noticed was that the music on both sides of the street was different. And like everybody was just standing around kind of talking. Well, what if we actually brought some harmony to it? So we actually brought some mantras. And so we could start singing for peace, and we could advocate for what we want. Like these are the things we really need to become more proactive about, that only came into my awareness because I went to the one yesterday that I realized could be done far more effectively. And I did actually say it to the guys that put it on, of just gathering people, just calling people to come, and people came because people want to come. Everybody wants to be part of something bigger than themselves. But we have to be organized, because the dark side is very organized. And unfortunately, the dark side hide in plain sight in the shadows. So we just have to become the ones that stand where we are and be the lighthouses that we already are, because you who show up for this are a lighthouse in somebody's life. In your community, you're a lighthouse. Otherwise, you wouldn't show up for something like this. So please understand that I recognize that in you, and I acknowledge that, and I celebrate that, and I appreciate it, because you are playing such an important role in this life. There are so many souls that are being deceived by ones that they believed loved them, that had their best interest at heart, that they have been completely indoctrinated to believe are there for their best interest, and it's not true. And it's a horrifying reality to wake up to. And the people in your life that know you, that maybe don't know me or somebody else that may be speaking these kind of things, they know you. And you're the one that they're going to reach out to. And you have to be able to be strong enough to know your own limits as to how much you can give of yourself before it starts to drain the well. Because if you look at your well as being a account ledger, for instance, it's just like everything you do that is serving you is increasing the supply within that well, but everything that you do that is just taking because it's irresponsible or in obligation, which is the dysfunctional creative experience of constraint and freedom, which are the functional alternatives that we think we're playing in, but actually we've just stepped out beyond the limits and created our own dysfunctional extremes, which is irresponsibility that feels very free, but then constraint, or no, it's the obligation feels very free. No, it is. I was correct. Sorry. Yeah, basically, you've got constraint and freedom on the center, and then outside of it, you've got constraint, which means this is irresponsibility because you feel like, no, it's the other way. This is obligation and this is irresponsibility. Irresponsibility feels very free, but obligation is what comes from irresponsibility. And then you have the constraints that you have already enjoyed the rewards of and now have to pay for. So you've got constraint and freedom and obligation and irresponsibility on the outside of that. But nobody's talking about that because it's not common knowledge. But common knowledge is rarely common practice. And so you who are the one people turn to, work within constraint and freedom, boundaries, and then what's truly free, that's already paid for and that doesn't tax anybody, that doesn't cost extra, but that fuels you. That is what is truly free. And so being ourselves, being able to just be as we are, to be able to stand in the streets under the sun and connect with our fellow man and women. Wow. It's small glories in life that truly are what it's all about. So the check-in for this week, how many days this week did you do your morning pages if you've been doing them since we started this? Have you allowed yourself to daydream a few creative risks? Are you coddling your artist child with childhood loves? Did you do your artist date this week? Did you use it to take any risks? What did you do and how did you feel? Did you experience any synchronicity this week? What was it? And were there any other issues this week that you consider significant for your recovery? And describe them. So that is this week. I hope you will do some of those exercises. Next week is going to be recovering a sense of strength. So I look forward to bringing that to you. If you can come on Tuesday at 3:30, we've got the last Mad Hatter's Mystic Music Album 22 Project Summits before the April 2nd deadline for the 22 songs that are being submitted by conscious creators. And so that is all going to be available in the near future. So Tuesday, 3:30, come for that. And then Thursday at 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, all of these are, I'm just out of Toronto in Norfolk County, Canada. So if you are available at 4 o'clock Thursday, come for the Peaceful Inner Warriors United Lawfully Organized Summits. And then it's the 11th one. So really looking forward to what's going to come from that. Thursday evening at 7 o'clock, we're going to read the next part of Saint Germain on alchemy. And then on Friday, we have a special treat. Michael Seegers is going to be joining me, and he has things that he is prepared and willing to talk about. And yet we also want to see what others have to share or have questions or things they want to contribute as well around the topic of Jesus. So we're going to have on Friday night at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time a summit about who is Jesus and why is his legacy so important. So we're going to have that on Friday at 7 o'clock. And I am also looking forward to figuring out when we can get into this. But before we do that, I've got other things to do, and so do you. So we're going to say adieu for today. I am going to check over on Facebook. So I'm going to say thank you for tuning in over on YouTube. You're amazing. And I look forward to coming to you again very soon. Have a great day. Toodaloo.